Hi, my name's Caroline. Welcome to my channel. I would like to talk to you today about the idea of having a plan B. So what do I mean by that? So a plan B is something that I've been working with one of my clients on this idea. It's actually a concept that she came up with through our conversations together. And the idea is that she experiences panic attacks. I won't talk about the details of how, where, and when. But yes, there are certain situations that trigger panic attacks for her. And through our conversations, she realised that one of the things that was helping her through the panic attack and going into a situation where she was anticipating experiencing a panic attack, one of the concepts that was helping her was this idea that she has a plan B in her back pocket. So for example, let's take the example. I'm going to the hairdressers this afternoon, and hopefully she can do something with this mop. But let's say, for example, you find going to the hairdressers triggers your anxiety. You feel nervous, and there's something about that environment that sends your heart rate rising. Maybe you feel very sweaty. Maybe your throat feels like it's closing up. Maybe your mouth feels quite dry. Or the converse scenario could also happen, whereby you could do with going to the hairdressers, but you feel total lethargy. You find reasons to not go. You find it hard to sort of get out of bed in order to go to the hairdressers. And both of those symptoms are most likely to be that there's something around visiting the hairdressers that your subconscious mind is saying to you, there's something dangerous there. There's something that I'm worried about. There is some fear going on for you. Now, I'm not suggesting that you've had a terrible experience at the hairdressers, although maybe you have, but there might be something about either maybe sitting in a chair and being in a position whereby you are having to talk to someone for a period of time. It might be that you feel as though you're going to be trapped in that chair. It might feel as though for some people, you're having to stare at yourself in the mirror for, it can be in the hairdresser. If you have long hair, or if you have hair that takes a lot of styling, man or woman, or gender neutral, you can be in a position whereby you are having to look at yourself for a prolonged period of time. That in itself can be extremely difficult to manage if, for example, you have any sort of body dysmorphia, or if you just find it hard, like looking at yourself. One of the reasons why there was such an increase in plastic surgery after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, was because so many people were having Zoom meetings whereby they were being forced in inverted commas, to look at themselves for long periods of time. And usually we just don't do that. Usually, well, I put my makeup on, looking in the mirror, brush my hair, get dressed, and sort of take a check that I haven't got, my skirt tucked into my knickers. But I wouldn't be staring at myself for long periods of times. And during the pandemic, we were put in a position whereby that was a thing. That was a thing for a lot of us. And that can trigger some strong feelings. We might have issues with how we look. We may not feel comfortable. We might, you know, and in a hairdresser's, for example, with the strong overhead lighting, it's going to be showing up all our greys. We're going to be seeing all our wrinkles. If you're, you know, older like me, and we might feel vulnerable. We might feel as though, you know, very often hairdressers become our therapists, just because they're kind of there, and you know, you might end up chatting about sort of deeper stuff, and that might feel intimidating. You know, maybe you feel like actually you don't want to open up to your hairdresser. Maybe you worry. Maybe you have social anxiety. Anyway, there are lots of reasons why the example I've chosen might be a tricky one, but you can apply this to any scenario. Could be going to the supermarket, could be, I've had clients who struggle getting petrol, and they have had to ease themselves back into doing that by finding times, for example, in which the petrol station won't be very busy, so they can gradually ease themselves after a period of total isolation due to finding contact with other humans too challenging, too overwhelming, that they were ending up with panic attacks, and they've had to ease themselves back into getting petrol by going to the petrol station at night. I mean, in particular, this is a whole different. This is a whole different topic that I could do a whole series of videos around. Particularly coming out of the pandemic, there's been a huge increase in people experiencing panic attacks, and as a result of the pandemic. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole today. What I really wanted to focus on was this idea that my very clever client came up with of putting in place a plan B. And we worked out that what had happened, again, I'm going to keep this anonymous, but we'd worked out that what had happened in particular in her earlier years was that she wasn't given choices. So there were things she was told to do, and if she didn't do them, there would be big and very unpleasant consequences for not doing the thing or the things. And often those things were really challenging, and often she would be expected to do those things on her own with no support. And some of those things that she was required to do involved being watched by a lot of people. And so for her, there was this sense of being judged, having no choice, being forced, because the consequences of not doing those things felt worse than putting herself through those things. And because it was her started in her younger years, when we're young, we have very little power. We have very few choices. We pretty much have to do as we are told, because otherwise we run the risk of, you know, not surviving. You know, on a physical level, we have to play ball, because we're not the ones buying the food and putting the roofs over our heads. And so very quickly we can learn, if our childhoods were or our younger years were less than optimal, we can learn various different strategies for coping with that. I won't go down that rabbit hole either. So yeah, so my client realized that because she hadn't been given choices or options when she was younger, that actually when she was fast forward to her the age she is now, um, there are certain things that were reminding her subconsciously of really tricky situations that she'd been in when she was younger. And those situations had not ended very well for her. They'd been really, well, some of them been traumatic um, situations. Some of them hadn't been traumatic, but had taken her out of her comfort zone to the point where it was really uncomfortable for her. And even though the situations when she was older weren't the same situation, there was enough similarities that was reminding her subconscious of these awful experiences in her younger years. And so her nervous system is now giving her these big messages of, oh my goodness, this is not safe for me to be doing this. And so our nervous system gives us a massive adrenaline dump, a massive cortisol dump. And this is what a panic attack is. Our heart rate speeds up. We get really dry mouth sometimes because our body is preparing us to fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. I won't go into all of those today. Again, another topic. But when we are in our fight or flight mode, that's when our heart's racing. That we don't feel like we can think straight. We might feel like we're going to faint. We feel like running away, or we get really angry. And when we freeze, that's if you remember when I first started talking about this, that this is the opposite, pretty much the opposite response, in that we don't feel motivated, we find reasons not to do the thing, we want to stay in bed, we just can't face the world. We might sort of find ourselves daydreaming or spending hours sort of numbing out by scrolling on our phones, whatever it is that our brain needs in order to we try to avoid the thing, because the thing feels super scary, even if the thing to other people maybe doesn't sound very scary. So maybe, taking my example of going to the hairdressers, to a lot of people, they think, oh, that sounds lovely, pampered, nice chats, read a magazine, get handed coffee and biscuits. What's not to love? But to other people, feeling trapped in a chair that you cannot, well, you can get out of it, but you might end up with your hair oh, that I've just been reminded of the episode in Fleabag. I don't know if any of you watch Fleabag, where she comes out with this very asymmetric, very harsh asymmetric haircut. It's very funny. I highly recommend it. But yeah, so we might, this is the image that our brain might create for us of, oh my God, what if I panic in the hairdresser's chair? Am I then going to have to run out because my feelings are too intense and I can't stay there? Am I going to end up with, looking awful? And if I do, how am I going to fix my hair? And the way our hair looks is very important. It's part of our identity, and we want to look nice. So these are all the thoughts that might be coming to us, and our brains, then our minds, our rational minds, then starts to think of reasons why. Well, maybe I'm not going to go. Maybe I'll just tie my hair back, and I'm just not going to go because it all feels too overwhelming. And that's when we get into a cycle of not doing these things. And then the going to the hairdresser, or the, going to get petrol, or going to the supermarket, they then start to take on a life of their own as being these really big, scary, challenging experiences that there's no way we can get through. Um, and it's also very difficult to get support from friends and family sometimes if they don't understand, because for other people they might think, well, what's so scary about getting petrol? Why can't you just nip into the shop and get a bit of milk and bread? I don't get it. And so that can feel even more isolating for people, because they're just not getting the support. They're not being validated. Their feelings aren't being heard, because maybe they don't want to talk about it, and maybe they just sort of find ways to avoid it. And other people are kind of thinking, well, that's odd behaviour. Like, why can't you go and get petrol? What, and it can cause problems in friendships and relationships. If you have a good friend who lives at a bit of a distance, and maybe they feel like they're always visiting you, and the reason why you can't reciprocate is you've got this block. I can't visit my friend because I don't want to go to the petrol station. It's too scary for me. Well, how do I explain that to my friend? How do I explain that to her? And so maybe you might just then start to isolate rather than being vulnerable. You might start to isolate, and it can really, really affect friendships, relationships, work, yeah, all sorts of areas. So this concept, back to my original reason for doing this video. So what can help us get over, or at least sort of start to move towards being able to do the scary thing? What can we have in our back pocket that is going to give us a little bit more confidence, a little bit more of a feeling of, well, do you know what, maybe I could just edge myself towards giving it a go. We're not saying sort of throw yourself in, because I'm not a huge believer in I think exposure therapy can work, but I think we need to put in a lot of resources first before we push ourselves through the tricky thing. Because if we just end up pushing ourselves through, we're going to have another panic attack, and that's just going to reinforce this feeling of, oh my God, it's too scary, I can't do it. So yes, we don't want to completely avoid doing the thing, but until we're in a place in which we feel as though we've got enough resources, we've got enough plans in place, plan Bs, support from other people, if it goes wrong, who can I call? And so this idea of creating a plan B is just so simple and so brilliant in its simplicity. And so we started to talk about, what could her plan B look like? Let's play out this worst case scenario. Let's play out the scenario of, so yeah, okay, let's take my example of the hairdresser. What could we do? What can we do to make that visit feel not so scary going in? What is the plan B? So yeah, let's talk about that. What are our options here? Because at the end of the day, we do have options, we do have choices. It may feel like those choices are very limited, but we do have them. So could she go to the hairdresser? Could she take a friend? Would a friend come with her and just sit there and like be there in case she feels like things are getting a bit tricky? Could that be an option? I think you could. Why not? If you phoned the hairdresser in advance and said to them, you know, oh, you don't even have to tell them the real reason, but I also think that it's probably a good idea to tell them the real reason if you feel able to. But, you know, give them a bit of notice. Could I bring a friend? Could you place me in a position whereby, you know, my friend can sit with me? You know, I need some support at the moment. I think that's a completely reasonable thing to ask. And yeah, just what I said before, being vulnerable, you know, if you don't choose to take a friend with you when you arrive, could you have a conversation with your hairdresser? Um, could you have a conversation and say, look, you know, I'm really struggling at the moment. Um, if I stop talking, or if you know, if I feel like I need to get some air, if I need a drink of water, if all of a sudden I stand up and sort of head towards the loo, like, this is just something I'm going through, and I just want to let you know because, you know, I hope it doesn't seem a bit odd and it's not you. And, you know, just really, could you please just give me a bit of space? Or I might need you to back off for 5 minutes whilst I calm myself, whilst I ground myself, whilst I go out and get some fresh air. You know, why not? Why not? Why can't we be vulnerable? That might feel challenging, but just putting it out there, why not? And, you know, taking the hairdressers as an example, you know, I imagine most hairdressers have heard pretty much everything, because a lot of people do really open up to them, and most hairdressers really are people. Um, so, you know, I I would hazard a guess that most would really understand and be very em- empathetic to that. Um, what else? What else have we got in our plan B? Could you take a good friend and partner, and if you don't have them sat there with you, could they be waiting outside so that you know that they're there? You know that worst case scenario, you can, you know, leave, get in the car and go, or they could come in. What else? What else calms you down? Um, could you bring a magazine, a book, Kindle, your phone, your therapy dog? Um, could you bring your AirPods, earphones? Obviously, not the ones that go over your head, but could you say to your hairdresser, look, I'm, you know, things are a bit tricky for me at the moment. I'm really sorry. I'm not, it's not that I'm being antisocial, but in order to get through this, I just need to listen to some meditation or some music. You know, how would that feel? Would that help you? What else? What else have we got in our plan B? You know, a couple of my other videos, I've included stuff about the butterfly hug tapping, um, as a way to really calm your nervous system. You can tap on your thighs, you can tap up here. So if you're starting to feel the anxiety rising, there's also, I need to do another video, it's been on my to-do list. There's the vagus nerve massage, which is basically all around. I'll do another video explaining it in more depth, but just pinching, lightly pinching all the way around the rim of the ear, the tragus. Mine's pierced, so actually that might be helpful. You can probably see it a bit more. Pinching or massaging this part of the sticky out part of the ear. There is a point actually that really helps some people. I think it's around about there. You can put your finger in your ear and down either side of your neck. Sometimes if I'm feeling a bit stressed, I catch myself sort of doing this. There are acupressure points on your face. I think there's one around here. Again, I'm going to do some further videos. So there are some really practical things you can do. Again, you may feel, you know, a bit self-conscious doing it in front of other people, which I understand, but you could probably do the ear, maybe not in the hairdresser, but you could say to your hairdresser, look, you know, I get really stressed and this really helps. So, you know, you can do this without it affecting your hair, I imagine, or definitely tapping on your thighs or arms. So you've got those as your options as well. And then, yeah, strategize. Worst case scenario, you know, talk this through with a friend. Talk this through with a partner. Talk this through with your therapist. Worst case scenario, if I'm feeling like absolute shit whilst I'm filling up petrol, whilst I'm going to the supermarket, whilst I'm in the hairdressers, whatever it is I'm doing, what's worst case scenario looking like for me? Worst case scenario is, let's say, panic attack gets so bad that I have to completely abandon everything I'm doing. Okay, what does that look like? I have to, you know, does it mean I'm walking out the hairdresser with my flea bag haircut? Maybe let's not choose too drastic a haircut then. You know, maybe I could switch hairdressers for a while. Could I find a hairdresser that will come to my home? Could I, you know, just have a dry cut to begin with, just whilst I'm easing myself back into the idea of having haircuts? You know, similarly with my client who found it tricky going to petrol stations, you know, can we ease ourselves back in? Because there's so much pressure on us to achieve and to be able to do, you know, do everything. So much pressure on social media to like be Wonder Woman, Superman, you know, to be making millions, have a perfect relationship, have an amazing social life, you know, look incredible, live in a mansion, drive incredible cars. And yeah, honestly, most of it's a load of bollocks. You know, there's no reason why you can't have those things, but you know, the reality is we all have issues. We all have issues. It's just most of the time we hide those issues. Most of the time we don't talk about them on social media. Most of the time we just post the pictures where we look all right. We're having a good hair day. You know, we've just got a certificate. You know, I'm just as guilty as the, you know, rest of the world for doing this. I'm trying, as part of this YouTube sort of adventure, to be more vulnerable and to share some of my own personal experiences, as well as some stuff that's, you know, come up for my clients, in order to kind of go, you know what, life can be a bit crap sometimes. So yeah, worst case scenario, I just have a trim. I just have a trim, and I, you know, have crappy hair for a while. You know, worst case scenario, I go to the hairdressers and it doesn't work out, and I go, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna have to leave. I'm really sorry. You know, bill me. And you know what? You've tried. You've tried. You know, from my own experience, when I was at university, I had a panic attack when I was giving a presentation, and I was giving I remember it clear as day, even though it was 30 something years ago. Um, and I was giving a presentation about social housing, and I was really prepared, but the thing that really bothered me was that I knew there'd be questions at the end, and I knew that I didn't know enough about social housing to be able to answer um, sort of really in-depth questions. And I was in a group of people, most of them were introverts, and I just had this sense that I was going to be the one having to step up and answer questions that I wouldn't be able to answer. And so I ended up, this was my worst nightmare. In the middle of my presentation, my throat closed up. It felt like my tongue was like so swollen that it was hanging out of my mouth. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing. I didn't know what was happening. And I literally just had to hand my notes to the person next to me and say, I don't know, really remember what I said. I think I just said, I'm really sorry, I have to go. And I just sat in the toilet for the rest of the presentation. So, my body was actually, it wasn't very helpful, but my body had found a way to help me get out of the presentation, because my nervous system was saying, this is really scary. You're going to be put in a position that you don't think you can handle. Here you go. Let's get you out. Let's find a way. You will have no choice. We are going to get you out of there. All completely beyond my control. It's your nervous system. You can't speak to your nervous system. It doesn't understand words. You can only show it that you're keeping it safe with doing your tapping, with giving it messages like these strategies we're talking about with the Plan B. We can give our nervous system messages to tell it that we're listening, and to really find ways to soothe it as best we can through these really tricky situations that we find ourselves in, that where we may previously have been really easy, found it really easy to cope, and yet for whatever reason things have changed. We've had different experiences as we've grown up, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves going, I can't do the thing. I'd never had a problem doing the thing. I could always go to the supermarket. It didn't bother me in the slightest. And the reason why I can talk with, I think, a level of confidence around some of these techniques and some of my thoughts, and sharing some of my experiences and stories, is because I couldn't do public speaking. I could not do it, and I battled that for years. When I worked, I've done various things in my life, but one of my jobs was working for Mind, the mental health charity, and one of my roles was to facilitate large groups of people in some very some big sort of big authority figures, sort of I won't go into it now, but yeah. And I struggled because I would have these panic attacks. I found it horrendous. I almost left my job because of these panic attacks. And believe me, I tried everything. I tried propranolol. I'm not saying don't try beta blockers, because they work for some people, but for me, not so much. And I tried everything. I tried hypnotherapy, I tried this, I tried that, I tried the other. And it has only been through therapy and through my own personal development work that I'm even able to, yeah, I mean, I started a YouTube channel like 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and that was because I'd been working on myself. So, but even now, talking to you now, I can feel my, I can feel sort of a bit of dryness in my mouth. Um, so I can still feel that my body's a little bit, this feels a little bit scary. You're putting yourself out there for judgment. But because I've got all these tools and these tips, and because I've eased myself in gently, and because I've done a lot of self-development work, um, I can do it. I can do it. I can sit here and I can talk, and I can know that this is going to be in a public forum. Um, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, anyway, I think I have talked a lot today. I hope that's been helpful. Um, yeah, kudos to my amazing client, to all my amazing clients who I just am in awe of, and who just work so hard, day in, day out, to really push through some really tricky situations that they're facing. And I'm very grateful that to be able to share some of this learning and some of these tips and tools that have helped other people. And I just really hope that they can help you. And if you feel like sharing your experiences yourself, that would be lovely. I think the more we can talk about this stuff, the better. If you've got anything that has helped you in particular through panic attacks, or through sort of low, social anxiety, or just general anxiety, or depression, then please also feel free to leave that if you would like to. If you have a moment, if you could put a little like on my video, I would really appreciate that. That helps the YouTube algorithm. I'm not doing this for, I don't get any money. I am not taking clients, so I don't get any financial gain from this. I really am genuinely hoping that some of the stuff that I've been through myself, and some of the stuff my clients have been through, and some of my training and experience will help others, because not everyone can afford therapy, or wants to go to therapy. So if you also have any ideas for videos that you'd like me to talk about, please feel free to leave those as well. And I hope you have a lovely day, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye.